Hi. Today I'd like to share with you my vision of how to effectively put information and communication technologies in the service of the city of the future. As an engineer, we might consider a city as a kind of concentrator, a hub with an internal structure through which many commodities flow. People, resources, such as energy, water, information, ideas, food, goods, right? And what we try to do is optimize the way things flow through the city, right? But cities are more than that. Cities are also a place where ideas are born and through which ideas transit and are augmented and changed and transformed. So we transform not only goods, but also ideas, right? So from a technological perspective, the vision consists in applying three broad capabilities across the scope of a city's resources, its users, its administration, and its environment. So what are these three technologies or three capabilities? Well, the first is networks of sensors and actuators. So we have an example in the smart grids of today that are supposed to improve our consumption of electricity and reduce the costs. So there are sensors that measure how much current is being used by the various appliances and devices we have in the house. And there are actuators that allow the utility or to remotely or you locally to switch on and off the individual devices in order to control the use of electricity or to use electricity when it's available or cheaper, right? The second technology is something called open data. So open data is the ability to put into the hands of the public through standard internet and web protocols information that is of concern to the citizen and also to the administrators or the government of the city. Right? So examples might be the raw information coming from the sensors or process data that's coming from the sensors. It might be administrative information or city planning information, like the maps of where the roads are and the resources and buildings, both historic, present, and future. Remember, this is all accessible through the internet by applications, right? And then also the schedules of resources. So train schedules, bus schedules, the schedules for when public works are going to take place at a different place in town, etc. The third technology is analytics and control. So analytics and control is essentially software that runs either on a public or private computing infrastructure that is going to continually monitor the information coming from those sensors, right? And evaluate that information or derived information according to a set of criteria. And then it's going to try and produce desirable outcomes, whatever they might be, by controlling the actuators that are out there. Okay? So that's kind of the vision, three components with the sensors, open data, and the analytics and control. So some examples of a small environment in which the whole system can be embodied would be, for example, the autopilot system in a modern airline. So the pilot gets some information from air traffic control as to the direction he should be going and the path, the altitude at which he should be flying. He puts his information into the autopilot, presses go, and the autopilot then measures the position, direction, and altitude of the plane, the speed, and then adjusts the control surfaces, the ailerons and so forth, engine speed and so forth to maintain that setting. Of course, if the radar shows that there's some turbulence ahead, the pilot will have to deactivate the autopilot, fly around, and then say, okay, go again. Other examples are like nuclear reactors, very important to have a good control system there, but also modern appliances like washing machines and dryers and so forth. You can think of other examples, sort of more larger scale, traffic control system in a city. There are points in the road where the frequency of cars passing is measured, and when the number of cars becomes to a certain level, the system starts controlling the flow of traffic coming into those points by setting the traffic lights red and green at different frequencies. So that's an example of some systems, but these systems are isolated and closed, right? A city is an extremely large and complex system, right, of users, resources, subject to a dynamic environment with lots of opposing intentions as opposed to what should the criteria be according to which we measure things, and what should indeed be the desirable outcomes that we try and strive for. So the question is, how do we decide what are these criteria? And how do we decide what are the desirable outcomes? Well, I believe the key to this is open data. This technology could extend the democratic process by influencing more directly the factors that affect the quality of life of the citizens. And it does this in two ways. One, by providing the citizen with a realistic view of the actual state of affairs. And secondly, it allows citizens or groups of citizens to bring their collective intelligence to bear and create new solutions for the problems that emerge. The quality of life has not always improved with the advancement and deployment of technology. If we look, for example, to the period of the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, people would flock to the cities to get jobs in factories and so forth. But what happened? Outbreak of disease, high mortality rate, and it took the authorities quite a while to figure out that there was a correlation between the presence of contaminated water and disease, which eventually led to the fact that they constructed drains for sewage and so forth. So, when we look at the needs of a city, there's more than just health that we need to consider. There's a whole bunch of human needs, right? And every human is different, like every city is different. But I like to classify human needs into sort of four categories. First is like essential physical needs, like having air to breathe, water to drink and wash with, food, and protection from the environment. The second category involves safety or protection, and this is the one where the city administration has sort of the biggest concern or the biggest responsibility in a way. So this is protection of our persons and also of our possessions. Protection of the resources that we use, the roads, the buildings, communication systems, the internet, and so forth. But when we talk about protection of our persons, it's more than protection of our persons against the violence of people or machines. It's also to protect our person against deteriorating health caused by environmental factors or what's in our food, for example. So, how do we deal with this whole situation and make laws that allow our city to essentially address these essential needs? But there are also higher level needs. I would classify social and intellectual needs as a higher level need. The city also provides for these through things like recreation facilities, sport, music, theatre, entertainment, dance, and of course, education. And the fourth class, I just mentioned it, is friendship. This is the highest human gift, but it is well beyond the purview of both technology and government. So if we look back into history, cities have had an enormous effect on the development of Western European civilization. In fact, I would say that The cities of Eurasia and the Mediterranean basin are the crucibles in which were forged our culture, civilization, and political systems. Now, it is forecast that by 2050, there will be 9 billion people living on our planet, 70% of which will be in cities, right? It's going to be really important that we properly run the city of the future in order to preserve and improve our quality of life. And we're going to need to do so by addressing the combined problem of the human needs, as well as the issues resulting from the high concentration of people and their mechanical contrivances. So, if we go back to health and take health as an example and sort of picture the future city, a city that's got sensors spread all over it, sensors measuring the quality of the air, not only particulate pollution, but also heavy metals, and also noxious and potentially toxic gases in the air. Right? This information is streamed continually into a data platform where people can get a heat map showing the quality of the air in the different areas. Right? We can develop applications that can superimpose or overlay the placing of human activity, industrial activity, and weather on top of this map of the quality of the air, and potentially even the health of people. So through this, people will get a clear and empirical view of what the state of affairs are, right? And thereby gives them the choice to modify their behavior in order to change the outcome on their health. Okay. We can envisage analytical processes that are running on the platform that are optimize the flow of traffic in order to reduce the impact on the environment. By giving people the opportunity of inputting their intentions into the system, like for example, tomorrow I'm going to go to work at 8 o'clock and I'm going to be going from here to there, right? If the system has this information through our calendars, it can do predictive optimization, right? For example, if we imagine that the system knows where all cars are trying to get to, what is their destination, right? It can then route each individual car separately via different roads in order to reduce the load on the roads, right, congestion, as well as improve the impact on the environment, and of course get people to their destination at the right time. So in summary, by applying these three broad technologies, that is networks of sensors and actuators, open data, analytics and control, and by putting the human being into the control loop as an active component of the system, I feel we can build a positive future for everybody. Of course, there are going to be big issues. Well, that's for sure. In the future, we don't know what's going to happen. But we do know that security is probably going to be one of the major issues. So security involves the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. But we learn by doing. And in order to take the first steps towards this vision, I would have a set of recommendations. The first one being, educate the municipal government officials in information and communication technologies, not only about the possibilities and potential that they have, but also the drawbacks and the limitations, because there's too much emphasis put on how good technology is and not so much on the bad side. The second is hire engineers into municipalities, specifically multidisciplinary engineers, and empower them as engineers to influence the process of investigation and decision-making in the administration. And finally, I would recommend that standards be developed and promoted and adopted in these three areas that I've mentioned in order to reduce the cost of developing these technologies and also to make them available sooner. And in conclusion, I'll leave you with a bit of advice from one of my favorite philosophers, Heraclitus of Ephesus, who said, "Citizens should fight for their laws as much as they do for their ramparts." Thank you.